Part 1. Birds and Balloons. Chapter 1. The First Birdman. Even cave dwellers held fantasies of sailing through the air like birds, and for many, many centuries people thought they could do that by being birds, or at least copying them. Ancient Greece had its fable of Icarus, who steered through the sky on wings made of wax and feathers. Then, ignoring his father's warning, Icarus flew too close to the sun. The wax melted, and he fell into the sea and died. Later, wealthy Romans, hoping to discover the secret of bird flight and smart enough not to try it themselves, strapped wings on their slaves and sent them off tall buildings or cliffs, almost always to their deaths. The greatest scientists in history tried to decipher the enigma of flight. Leonardo da Vinci sought to diagram a flying machine, as did Isaac Newton. For centuries, inventors tried and failed to keep themselves in the air. With every failure, the dream of flight grew stronger. But the first successes were not with wings, but rather giant bags filled with gas. The first came on June 4, 1783, when two brothers, Joseph Michel and Jacques-Étienne Montgolfier, built and Jacques-Étienne successfully piloted a manned balloon over Annonay, France. Balloons quickly became all the rage. There is no describing the awe men and women felt floating in the air, and for the first time in human history being able to look down at the trees, rivers, villages, and towns below. But still, balloons weren't really flying. There was no control. A balloon was either free and would be taken wherever the wind wished it, or captive, attached to the ground by a very long rope. The dream of cruising like a bird remained unfulfilled. So, experiments in controlled flight, winged flight, went on, and continued to fail. Then, in 1891, a German engineer named Otto Lilienthal built a 50-foot hill outside his home near Berlin, Germany. He braced himself against a set of wooden-framed fabric wings and ran down the incline. To some, Lilienthal would have seemed ridiculous, just another crazy amateur trying to do what hadn't worked for the Romans. But Otto Lilienthal was no amateur. He had studied flight for 30 years and knew more about airfoils, the shape of wings, than any man alive. Using a whirling arm that he invented, he had taken tens of thousands of measurements of various shaped surfaces moving at different angles through the air. He wrote a book on the subject, Der Vogelflug aus Grundlage der Fliegekunst, ein Beitrag zur Systematik der Flugtechnik, Bird Flight as the Basis of Aviation, a contribution toward a system of aviation, which would become perhaps the most influential text ever written on flight. After decades of research, when he thought he had finally solved the problem, Otto Lilienthal built his set of glider wings to the dimensions he had determined from his calculations. He waited for wind conditions to be right, ran down his man-made hill, and soared. Over the next 5 years, Lilienthal made more than 2,000 flights, gathering knowledge and improving his design. He maneuvered in the air by shifting his weight, usually by kicking his feet. Photographers began to follow his every move, and images of the first birdman were soon making their way around the world. But to fly, even in a glider only 50 feet off the ground, Lilienthal needed luck as well as skill. On August 9, 1896, his luck ran out. Experimenting with a movable tail, he stalled and then fell, breaking his spine. The next day, Otto Lilienthal died. In his last hours, he uttered one of aviation's most famous sayings: "Sacrifices must be made." News reports describing Lilienthal's accident spread across the globe, including to Dayton, Ohio, and the headquarters of the Wright Cycle Company, Wilbur and Orville Wright, proprietors. Word of Otto Lilienthal's death, as Wilbur put it, aroused a passive interest which had existed since my childhood. And so, two brothers that no one outside their small community had ever heard of set themselves to furthering the work Otto Lilienthal had begun. They started with what they saw as the natural next step to Otto Lilienthal's wings: gliders. But the Wright brothers were not alone in attempting to advance Lilienthal's research, nor did everyone agree that wings should be the basis of flight. In California, one of the world's most famous daredevils